Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Davis and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsor, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. Printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get
the smarter way to print. Printing your creative project
and it's
can
doing
be
this again.
confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here.
So obviously Mixum is here to make it easier, and apparently YouTube does not like to cooperate with me, but Mixum is here to make it easier for you to print. They have an instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support. And Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed many successful Kickstarter campaigns. And some of them you might have even heard on this very show. Everybody says amazing things about Mixum. And so they also offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK, and Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com, and right now they're running an amazing promotion where the listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of the current order to get 5% discount. And I know everybody's running a Kickstarter. Every percentage point matters. And so obviously that's big. So that's Mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive 5% off. And without further ado, I have with me Aaron, Neff, and Frequency Girl. I believe I got that right. And you guys got a Kickstarter.
Yeah, what? We do right now. We're live on Kickstarter with our graphic novel, MAVRICS. Currently in crowdfunding. We still, I think, have 12 days left, 11 days left?
11.
11 days left. So we're coming to the end of a long and arduous journey, but, you know, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was great. I had a lot of fun.
And so let's talk about it, because obviously I'm a big mecha guy. And this is dealing with mecha. This is sort of genlock. It's war-oriented. I love military comics. I love military anime. And so what is the basic premise of MAVRICS? Because it is something that is a little bit different, and mecha comics are fascinating.
Yeah, there are not a whole lot of mecha comics in sort of like the Western comic book sphere. There's plenty in manga, but we don't have like a whole real dedicated, series of titles or genre for mecha comics, in the West. So we're really trying to tap into like a sci-fi, I guess you could call it a near future sci-fi military action thriller, if you wanted to like put a couple of genres together. But yeah, it's a book about big giant stompy robots in a alternate version of our world, ravaged by a series of global catastrophes dubbed the Cascade. Two rival nations have become global superpowers, and they're vying for world domination. So the story, MAVRICS Origins Volume 1, follows 6 brave pilots as they go behind enemy lines into a war-torn city to extract some refugees, and they encounter something that they're not quite prepared to deal with, and it becomes a desperate fight for survival. And yeah, I mean, we wanted to start kind of small scale, just kind of introduce you to the world through the lens of the pilots, giving you a very grounded story to give you a feel for the world. And then as we go, we're going to build it out and introduce more of like the flavor of like what's going on in the broader scale conflict across the world, the different countries that are, reeling from the aftermath and trying to rebuild, from being brought to the brink of destruction. So like we're going to go diving deeper into the world building in books 2 and then onward. Book 1 really is just sort of a starting in media res, stuff's going on. Grab your hat, get your coat on. We're running out the door. We got an adventure. Let's go.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. And so we're going to dive into a bunch of it, because obviously this is sort of straight out of the pages of anime in a lot of ways. And I am curious, though, how did you guys come up with the idea? Because as you stated, it is a mecha comic. It is a war comic. Obviously, there are robots. Obviously countries are warring with each other. And there really isn't that in American comics. I don't remember a last American mecha comic that I read. And even in Japan and Japanese, mecha comics aren't really done. It's more of an anime thing. So I'm so interested in how this all came about, because it is different. And it's something that I think is complicated to do. And from what I've seen of it, it's been pulled off nicely.
Thank you. You definitely have a point. It's far more anime than it is manga, or at least inspired by anime than it is manga. On the campaign, I list sort of a couple of different sources of inspiration for me. TV shows, cartoons, and anime are definitely one area where I find a lot of inspiration. We had shows, like Gundam, obviously, but we also had shows like Exo Squad here in the West. I don't know if you were around for Exo Squad. It's a little bit older, the younger generation. You kids these days, you might not know our cartoons, but I loved that show to death. And it really was, it was a space opera, but it was also very grounded in a military aesthetic, or at least, characterized by a military drama. And then the other thing that I draw off of is games. There are a lot of games that have influenced my love of giant robot suits. Front Mission comes to mind because it's also very grounded in like the military element, mass-produced giant fighting robots that take to the battlefield more like walking tanks than like the pristine Gundams that you see. Armored Core is definitely another one. Battletech, Mech Warrior.
Sly. When he was first working on MAVRICS, he would play Steel Lancer Arena like forever, 24/7. Just if he wasn't writing, he was playing.
I don't know. You write too, right? Like, do you like when you're doing your creative process, you have to be doing something other than staring at a computer screen. I do not know any writers that sit there like this, staring at their computer and come up with their ideas for their plots or mapping out their characters or anything. I usually see someone like, they have a pad or a notepad or something, and they're doing something else completely. And they're like, oh, okay, give me a second. Okay. And
I legitimately wake up at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, you're one by your bed, right?
I open up my like iPad or my phone and I just type in like 15 words and I just know immediately what it means, and then I go right back to sleep and I'm like, what the fuck does this mean in the morning? And then an hour later,
I've had that happen before. You're like, this is a great idea, and you're like, what does this? Yeah.
And then an hour later, it comes back to me, and then I'm like, okay, and then I have to obviously flesh it out. But it's the idea that like at 3 a.m, I'm half groggy. I don't know what I'm typing. It's not like Apple and my iPhone auto corrects it. And it's like the cat's jumping to the
that's
pool.
Even better. It's even better when the computer's like, did you mean this other thing that you didn't mean at all?
And it's phenomenal. And I obviously come up with jokes at like 3 a.m, and that happens too sometimes. And then obviously gets fleshed out. And so there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And what I like about this series more than anything else is that we have two forces that are going up against each other, and they're pretty evenly matched. And
there are others too. I'm just in this one. I'm focusing on almost diametrically opposed here two forces.
But it's this idea that I really like, that they're opposed by ideology. Obviously, there is a sense of freedom. There's more of a sense of, I guess, I don't want to say tyranny, but way more governmental control is how I sort of picked up on it, and it's very interesting. And well, they are equally matched in strength. And so now it's an ideology. It's also how things are done. It's also the best pilots. And it's so interesting with doing this. And so what was that like, really balancing out? Because
you're going to dig the story a lot, because it seems simple on the surface that it seems like contradictory ideologies. But when you explore the tapestry of the geopolitical landscape in this world, as I roll out more of it, you're going to learn that the nations are a lot more similar to each other on so many fundamental levels. Even though on the surface, ideology might seem diametrically opposed, they behave so similarly. Just in practice, like the unification, they believe that going outward and expanding and bringing the neighboring nations underneath the stability of their rule will provide safety and security to the populace. Like they believe that installing a government that everyone can be a part of, kind of like, almost Alexander the Great in mentality, maybe a little bit rougher. I call it benevolent invasion. I think is how I phrased it. And then you have Norco, which is desperately trying to cobble together some sort of plan for the future. And in the end of book 1, I kind of give you a peek into what that looks like, where they've tried to develop these pseudo-utopian cities where the city-states and people live prosperously under a new type of technology. But there's a darker side to that called not everyone lives there. You know, like even the people in their own country, where they put forward this idea of like freedom and perseverance, that, you know, people get left behind. So there's a lot to unpack as far as like the politics for the different countries. But when we're looking at it on a military scale, I love military dramas. I love stuff like Black Hawk Down was a huge inspiration for book 1, because this is about a military mission that goes sideways and soldiers get trapped behind enemy lines, and it becomes a desperate fight for survival. And, you know, Black Hawk Down is a gut-wrenching true story, you know, and I watched that movie, and it just, like, every time I watch it, it hits me like a train. So there's definitely an emotional element to it that I wanted to really bring to the forefront for the experience of the reader. I want people to care about the characters. You know, I want people to care about the consequences. As far as the military element, like you said, it comes down to the pilots, but the guys that are behind enemy lines, you know, the Norca pilots, Storm Squad, it's the name of the unit, they go up against something they're not prepared for, not because it's like just a you know, an enemy in the shadows. It's a technology they haven't encountered. So yeah, it's about like pilots versus pilots, but it also becomes about the difference in emerging technologies, and how, when we're faced with something like that, how do we adapt? How do we overcome it? So there's a lot of themes at play, a lot of stuff in the subtext that I kind of leave buried in the subtext, because I don't like bringing it too much into the forefront of the text. But the more you read it and the more you go for the ride, you'll have a great time. It's a story and it's a story and a ride first. It's sort of an examination of the world that I build, which is very much a near future. You know, it's called speculative fiction. Speculative science fiction is very possibly getting there from here. I really like that type of science fiction, because it's almost cautionary, or like, you know, we're heading there, so let's look at what could exist in the future. Let's talk about the potential benefits and perils of what it is we're doing now. And I think that's very timely, especially for, you know, our society, which is really accelerating its use of technology. So in that regard, you're looking at a world not too far removed from our own. Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to unpack there.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, we're dealing with a bunch of soldiers being behind enemy line and a mission going sideways. And there's also, I guess, the question that's being asked to some degree is, do we abort the mission? Do we continue onward? Is help coming? Because that's a big question. How the hell do we get out of this? Who knows? We're behind here. We're in another country, so we technically are invading that country's territory, which we're going to be viewed as a foreign threat. And then at the same time, and I don't know if you're familiar with the book Uber, Uber deals with, it's an alternative history, dealing with, you know, the people who fought in World War II, and they have a superhuman, and we're getting our asses kicked. And
it sounds somewhat similar. Yeah, it's definitely when you ramp up technology to that degree, it can feel like you're dealing with a superior foe. Even in World War II, though, they had, you know, the Leopard tanks, and there was a difference of scale in the technology in the tanks that we used in World War II. We would fight some of the German tanks, and they would just massacre our guys. You know, I don't know if you saw the movie Fury. With Brad Pitt, right? Brad Pitt was in that. I think Brad Pitt was in that. Yeah, I believe so. Shia LaBeouf was in it. Yeah, it was a bunch of dudes on a tank. You know, it was a story about a squad of guys on, and like they did a really good job, in my opinion, showing like how even when you're in something armored like a tank, you can feel vulnerable. And I liked that element of that movie. I wanted to grab that and stick a little bit of that into Mavericks, because you're walking around in a 30-foot tall, 60-ton combat suit with blast shielding on the front and all these giant guns, and like, you would think you feel invincible, right? But I also wanted to put that element of peril in there. Like, how do you threaten someone in that sense? I don't know. Did you ever see the anime Gundam 8th MS Team?
Oh, yeah. I like the 8th MS Team, man.
Yeah. 8th MS Team is kind of the closest thing in the Gundam universe, because it's very, I call it terrestrial. You know, it's not Gundam in space. It's just soldiers, and they fight the Goof custom. We have the model back there.
It's very much Vietnam.
Exactly. And so it's very much like that one scene where they fight the Goof, where they have numbers. You know, they encounter this pilot. They're not ready for what this guy brings to the field. Except in MS Team, it's because, you know, they're not incredibly experienced. In this one, this is a well-oiled machine. Yeah. These pilots, they know what they're doing. They have their roles. They're pretty much special forces. What they encounter, they're not ready for, because it exists on an entirely different level of the machinery that they're used to dealing with. And so in a way, it also becomes kind of like a shonen battle anime, where the guys back at base are watching this stuff unfold through the various vid screens that they have, because they have hard links to the suits that they're, you know, viewing. So they kind of have like the commentary where they're trying to figure out what to do and how to beat this thing that they're up against. They're trying to analyze all the different abilities that they're able to see that this thing can display, and trying to figure out how it's doing these things. And so it's almost like the group of people off to the side talking about the techniques, you know, like in anime, like when two fighters are squaring off in shonen, is like, aha, but you see his stance. That implies that he has hidden powers. He has yet to unlock his true potential. You know, like, funny shonen stuff. So there is definitely like anime influence in
it. And also that raises a whole bunch of other things, where it's now saying, okay, how do we counter this? And then obviously thinking bigger. And then also, whenever new technologies in one country, you have to ask what other countries have things coming out, and then what are we gonna...
how much? Yeah, I don't want to spoil Origins, but Origins sets up a bigger series called Evolution. Mavericks Evolution is about the evolution of these technologies that emerge in Origins and how they're applied to the world of the future and sort of change the course of human history in the future. So future history. Just the direction that we evolve as societies. When
a lot of questions are about to be asked, and where we're going with this is that we're sort of throwing, I guess, seeds on how do we get to a particular point, and it's also, you know, how did this all happen? Because whenever one technology is introduced naturally, and you're getting your ass kicked with it, or you're being, you know, forced to,
you got to come up with a counter.
And then you have to counter, and then because I'm a big fan of a bunch of weapons and way too much stuff. You know, I love declassified military stuff.
Keep going back to World War II, right? And we were getting our asses kicked in naval battles because there were these submarines that the Germans had that we couldn't counter. You know, the IJN fleets had them too. And there was like a, you know, code transmission thing that was going on where we couldn't anticipate their movements, and they like had tactics on us. So we came up with the technology to deal with that. That's the type of thing that I'm playing with here. The idea of like, what do we come up with to counter stuff that we don't know how to deal with? Well, we need something smarter than ourselves, right? So you see all sorts of interesting stuff emerge in this series, bro. It's a ride.
I'm a Robotech fan. I'm a Macross fan. I'm a Gundam fan. I love Outlaw Star. You know, Cowboy Bebop is fantastic, but it's going to be complicated in November. That's all I'm going to say on that point. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that's obviously, you know, in terrestrial. I love Galaxy 999, and I'm old school. Like, I'm Gundam 79, which is way before my time, way before I'm 28. Those who want to know. And so, but I like the fact that there obviously is something going on with this and all that technology stuff. And so I know I have an idea where it's going.
I'm not the most subtle person when I talk about my book, but the reason I can do that is because the book speaks for itself. The adventure element of the book, the drama on the page as it unfolds, the action, I can't tell you that. You have to experience that. When you crack that book, that speaks for itself. We could talk about some of the surrounding themes and elements and maybe some of the subtle things that are hidden underneath when we're talking about different emerging technologies going to war against each other and what happens when those technologies try to counter each other or even, wind up swapping hands, who knows. But what I can't spoil is the experience of reading the book. So I'm really excited for that because my artist, man, he has been busting his hump trying to get this book like to the level that we want it. We've been working on it for 2 years. We did the book almost all the way through, got a real professional editor, high quality editor, used to work for Marvel. And he basically told us that what we were doing was very much worth doing. He loved the idea, loved the script, and we were hamstringing ourselves in various ways and not achieving the true potential that the script had. So we went and redrew 2/3 of the book. And then we got about halfway done and realized we could do better on colors. So we went back and recolored the book. We've done this book 3 times. It feels like a well-trod path at this point.
Yeah, it looks so good now.
It looks better than it did.
To even talk about that, because obviously I've never written a comic before. I may or may not, get into that right now. It's not the parameter. I have a project that's sort of going to be dealt with in November that I don't want to talk about too much. It's going to be announced in 2 weeks, everybody.
We're excited for that.
Yeah.
And so,
hey, you got to deal with Mix'em. You should be thinking about doing a comic. You should be thinking about doing a comic.
Right now I'm dealing with a project that's more pressing that actually needs to be dealt with for economic reasons, first and foremost. And then eventually I have an idea, and then everybody's going to hate my idea and love it at the same time because it's going to break everybody, and you're all going to be proud of me, I promise.
I can't
wait. Oh, it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be phenomenal. It involves tanks. It's going to be phenomenal. But
I like tanks.
I draw a mean tank. I'm going to leave it at that. And that's all the clues. That's all you're going to get out of me.
All right.
Just without any alcohol involved, at the very least. But where I'm going with this is that obviously, what is that like to bring in a professional editor and then take criticism and then to say, hey, as we could do better and that we need to amp it up, because that's something that I think people don't do, and people don't take criticism well. And also a lot of people say, look, I don't want to spend the money and I don't want to push into all this, and I don't want to, go in and tell my artist that you did a great job, but we could do better. And then go back to your color, said, you did a good job, but we can do better, and do it nicely, because the last thing you want to do is piss off your colorist who just worked their ass off, or your artist, and be like, hey, gotta amp it up because, they have feelings too.
It also usually costs, if you haven't already negotiated like redraws with your artist ahead of time, because you are working with an editor. When an artist turns in a page and you go, yeah, I accept this page, we're ready to go, like that, you're done.
Yeah.
If you want to have it redrawn and you haven't negotiated something like that in your work for hire, you're gonna have to pay him again. But luckily, Garrett lives with me. So he's my buddy and my partner in bringing this to life. I'm the ideas and the story and the words, and he's the visuals, and he draws out the world, the mechs would not look, the Mavs, we're trying to go with our own lexicon, wouldn't look the way that they do without him. Because, I would talk to him about what I want, but I can't draw. I can crudely sketch at best. So when we design them from the inside out, it was a process of figuring out how these things would anatomically, look, but also making them look cool at the same time as look, rough and practical. As far as working with an editor, I used to be an editor too. I've edited stuff in the past, so I understand what it's like to give criticism. And a big part of learning to take criticism is understanding how criticism is given. Anyone can give their opinion on something. If they're not going to offer ways for you to fix it, it's just an opinion. Anyone can offer their opinion on something and be wrong too, because it's an opinion. If you're getting a good editor work with you, they're going to tell you, hey, I see what you're trying to do. They're not going to tell you your idea is dumb, even if your idea is dumb. They're going to say, I see what you're trying to do. I see what you've done, and I see how they're measuring up against each other. And a good editor who wants you to succeed will say, I see what you're trying to do. Have you thought of doing this as well? And that's the cue to go, oh, my idea is dumb. I need to, I need to adapt a little bit more and maybe change course. But luckily, Jake was very much on board when he read the script right off the bat. And he was like, yeah, I need to see the art for this. Learning to take criticism is something everyone has to go through. Look, you're going to have scenes that you love. They have the phrase, kill your darlings. It's actually true. There's a saying that says, no scene is worth a line and no script is worth a scene. So if a line, even if you love it, if it's the snappiest dialogue that you can think of, doesn't quite fit the mood or tone of the scene, you got to get rid of it. No matter how funny a scene is, how entertaining, dramatic, or just like pure excitement a scene brings to a script, if that scene does not enhance the pacing and the readability of the
it's very rare that
it's got to go.
Something can be forced in. It's very rare. Every once in a while it happens, but it's very rare.
Yeah. And usually that's stuff that kind of gets ad-libbed off the cuff, like when you're really plotting out a story, it's on you to figure out where everything goes. That's the whole idea of the arc, like even just single books, when you're talking about unfolding a story over the course of a story arc, each book itself has an arc. You need to understand the pacing in the issue, because readability is that's all you have in comics. Like you have pages, that's your real estate. That's the equivalent of time in a film is page space in a comic book, and you have a limited amount. So you're working within those confines. As far as dealing with criticism, I always look at it this way. Okay, so let's say the person knows nothing. Let's pretend for a second that they do know what they're talking about. If everything they say is true, and I were to apply it to myself right now, what could I do to enhance my product to meet that criticism? And if I can distill that down and say that's doable, that's something that I can bring to my script or to the color, let's say, or even to like redrawing a page, changing a layout, I'll consider doing it because someone has said, hey, I see a thing here. I think, it doesn't quite work. I kind of know what I'm talking about. Maybe. I've been reading comic books for 45 years. So I've seen a lot of comics. I think you could change that panel. What do I have to lose, right? I mean, pride. You be proud of your work when you're done. Don't be proud of your work before you're finished.
It's also the saying is that even if you're upset and somebody said something, but it made the book better, and then the book is more well received and it's selling more copies, at a certain point too, criticism has to also be equated to economics. And I know that's sort of the antithesis of the story, and that's more of the business side. Obviously, I come from a different side of comics where I'm more into the comic book investing side of things. And it's more of a business thing for me because I buy and sell comics. At the end of the day, you either make money or you don't. And to some degree with stories, if somebody's criticizing, they're saying, hey, I see what you're doing, and this is going to make your story pop out 30 times better, or it's going to make it more obvious, or we're going to go and completely go subtle, where we're going from piece right into a bomb dropping, and it changes the entire tone of the book for the better, and then that book, obviously gets more attention. Well, at a certain point, you also have to understand that a good editor wants your book to succeed. And that's the other thing, too. And you have to be very practical. At least that's what I think. Again, I've never done this.
If you're working at a studio, 100% you need a head editor who's kind of sitting there calling the shots, saying this book has that potential. We're going to spend a little bit more money changing these one or two details, maybe doing a redraw. And when we put it out there, it's going to be that much better because they can do the cost analysis, the risk reward ratio in their head, because that's what they do. While you're an assistant editor and you're working with one of those editors, you're learning to do that yourself, so that when you're a head editor at a studio, you are capable of doing that. It's another skill that you throw in your tool bag. Being indie, you have to figure that out for yourself. I can't tell you how many skills we've had to learn and pick up along the way doing this in order to succeed at making, then crowdfunding, and soon fulfilling a book. They were all lessons that we had to learn on our own, but luckily we kind of did what Master Splinter did in the first Ninja Turtles movie, taught himself ninjutsu by mirroring the movements of the ninja, right? So we just went into the crowdfunding scene and we looked at everything everyone else was doing. I went back about a year. I started looking at all of the projects, all of the campaigns that had been set up, how the campaigns were run, what the goals were, where the stretch goals were marked, what was being offered on those campaigns. I invested some of my disposable income in actually buying those books and backing those campaigns. So I had research materials. I mean, yeah, they're great comics too. Like I have a bunch of like really rare Billy Tucci covers. It's awesome. But it was all research. You know what I mean? We were learning how to
it's that. And yeah, so obviously I'm going to be launching a project on Kickstarter for something. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm looking at a bunch of people who've done stuff. And I've gone even beyond that, where I said, okay, how did they fulfill their project a year later or 8 months later? And how are those people happy with the result of what they did? And all of a sudden I asked a bunch of those people, because a bunch of those people have been on my show, and that's even further deep into it, because I'm really into the weeds and certain things that I want to do with it. I'm going to be fulfilling those issues that were missed. And I'm going to be solving that problem, because obviously a bunch of people are not happy with how things went with a particular project. And, but I'm looking at their writing, I'm looking at their images, and I mean, I'm going to be doing it better. And I don't want to sound like I'm copying and mimicking anything, but I'm going to be doing it better along with what I've done and in a particular area of expertise. Obviously, but this is why it's taken 2 weeks to write my copy, because I'm going through it piece by piece by piece by piece, and every word is going to matter. And I think it's so important.
You want to measure up and raise the bar on top of that.
I don't want to just raise the bar. I want to crush them. There's a difference where I want to do it so that it is evidently clear that looks like amateur hour versus mine looks like professionalism. And because that's just how I operate with everything I do. And I think it's very important to understand that. And I'm learning this skill, and then fulfillment is going to be easy for what I want to do, because it's digital. It's completely a digital fulfillment, which is a hell of a lot easier than physical rewards. But physical Kickstarter rewards, that's a whole entity in its own right. So I don't ever want to touch that sector ever in my life.
That's all Frequency Girl. But I mean, she's also the project manager. She manages the logistics. Yeah. She's the one in charge of all the spreadsheets. I'm kind of the idea guy. I come up with some plots and schemes, and I go, hey, these are my ideas. These are the potential pitfalls I see. Go out into the world and see if we can make this thing real. And if it's not working, come back to me and tell me why, and we'll fix it.
I love operations and logistics. I absolutely love operations and logistics. And this entire thing that I'm doing right here is completely operations and logistics. The interview and building interviews is about 20%. It is everything else is complete operations and logistics and scheduling, and it's crazy. And that's what I mostly do. It's insane.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Yep.
I like to say also, I mean, people hear me say it all the time. They get sick of my sayings, but steel sharpens steel, So you need other creators out there that are hungry like you, that want to break the bar, that want to set new records and push the envelope. Because no matter how well you do, the next guy in line that's hungry like you is innovating. He's trying to figure out, okay, this was great, and I loved what he did here. I need to do it better. It's my way of saying how much I loved it, by doing it better, by being like coming out and saying, you drove me to you know, like step up my game. You inspired me to make this thing, and I had to do it better than you because, you know, race is on, right? But that's the great thing about being a creator. We're all in competition, but it's not a cutthroat competition. It's not like you would see in corporate America or in major companies or like even in the big two. We're out there competing with each other to make each other better. Like I promote my fellow creators all the time. They promote
some people.
We have
some
like
are nicer than others in this sector.
True. That is true.
I have a series of people who are my enemies, and we're going to leave it at that.
I don't think we have enemies. We have some people who don't like us, but they don't like us for silly reasons. We haven't given them a reason to dislike us. They dislike maybe the company that we've kept in the past, or you know, some of the people that we hang out with, but we haven't given anyone a reason to not trust or not like us. We've done nothing but support indie comics wherever we encounter it. If we see a book and it's a good looking book and I want to get the book to either enjoy it as a product or to learn from it, I'm gonna back it. You know, I don't restrict myself.
Who are I like their books. They're just bad people, and they've crossed unprofessional lines, and it's unfortunate when that happens. And there's certain things that you can't do with me, and then just the disrespect factor. Yeah. And a bunch of people in this chat who are watching know exactly who I'm talking about, and it's not a secret. It's not a secret. It's just that it happens, but it's not a comic reason. It's a personality problem, which is how it should be. It's not a lack of talent problem. It's personality, and certain things were said that shouldn't have been said to me. So anyway,
I mean, you can also you figure, you know who you want to work with, right? And the more you work with the people that you want to work with, and you encounter new people, you decide if they're people you want to work with. You don't have to be friends with everybody. You don't have to get along with everybody, and there can be people you don't like. It's just, in my world, at least the world that I live in, not everybody lives in my world. I get it. I live in my own world. But in the world that I live in, the creators that I interact with, that I promote, who I back, who I want to, like, you know, take their brands and support them, but also use their brands as a blueprint to make mine better. I like what they're doing, you know? So
yeah, we've been really
I like to support my friends who are doing nice things. What were you saying?
Yep.
I was just saying, I feel we've been really lucky that all of the creators that we've met have just been wonderful. They're like super willing to collaborate too. Like there are people where I'm like, oh, you had a collector's box on your campaign. We were going to do that. These are the people that
we got two creators up in the chat on YouTube right now who popped in. One of them had a box that we reverse engineered along with some of the other boxes,
and like kept putting them back together. And you know, we're like, oh, who did you use? Because I was thinking of these people, and I really like the quality that you have. And like, without even hesitating, because there are some people that are like, no, they're mine, you can't have them. But everyone that we've interacted with, they've been like, oh yeah, this is who I used, and you know, this is why, and they're great, and it's just been really wonderful to kind of be able to collaborate with people, even on like silly things.
There's a great saying, and this is what's crazy, and I find it to be so true with when I'm looking for guests. People who are successful want to help other people, and they give their time. You know, people like Paul Levitz. I got to, you know, interview Denny O'Neil. People like Howard Cruz, you know, Tom DeFalco, Chuck Dixon. And all those people are some of the most successful comic writers ever in the history of comics. And they're all like, yeah, let's do it. You want to do it. You know, somebody like Ebass, you know, Eric Basaludo, which is a really big name. He's like, yo, I'll do it in like 5 minutes if you want after I shout him a message. The idea is that when people are very successful, they want to do things and they want to help. And when people are not so successful, they tend to be very protective and secretive of ideas. And it's very interesting when you start seeing it.
We actually encountered that. Yeah, it was fun. It was funny. I encountered it once. Someone said to us, like, "Oh, so you know, who are you using to do your what was it?
Oh, they were talking about, so we had our
teaser.
It's
a 10-page.
So it's the same print. PDF that's on the campaign page, but we printed it up just to make sure that we liked the printer we were going with, and to make sure everything.
We sell it for $1 to cover cost.
And then also it had a QR code to like, we'll give these out. We'll sell them for $1 to cover printing costs. And then it'll go right to the campaign once it launches. And someone was looking at it like, oh, wow, yeah, I really like this. It prints really well. I'm sure you're not going to want to give me your printer because I never give out who I use because, then it's competition. I'm like, oh, no, here's their card. Here's the name. This is the guy that I talked to.
I was momentarily taken aback by that second part because it's competition and I never give out that information.
I'm like, why
and
not?
I was like,
we're not even making.
We don't live in the same world, do we?
Yeah.
Look, I'm the first person. You all keep secrets. I'm going to be the first person to say this. There's certain people I have very personal relationships, and I'm not going to just give certain people and make an introduction with certain people that I don't know you. Versus if you randomly approach me and say, how did you get Ralph Tedesco from Zenoscope? If I don't know you and I don't trust you and I've never seen your work, I'm not going to make a recommendation because that would be a disservice. But if somebody says, hey.
That's on the level of personal relationship.
Yeah, this was just like, what company did you use?
But
but yes, I agree with that.
What printer are you using? I'm like, yeah, you could use Mixam, you could use Comics Wellspring, you could use Kablam. Like, that's not a secret. Now, obviously, everybody has a preference. And if you say, well, I just used printer A and I thought they were better than printer B, but then I use both, that's different. But that's also your experience, which is kind of crazy because printing is not a competition. That's very, very odd to me.
Yeah, the whole encounter was a little off-putting, I guess. It was a strange conversation of like, why wouldn't I give you that information? Like,
you're not even selling a comic book.
Yeah, it was just like, they were like, well, I'm planning on it in the future. I'm like, cool, awesome. You should totally do it. It's a lot of work, but it's really fun.
Hit us up when you got something in the works, and I'll take a look at your sample pages, and maybe we'll have you on the show. There is room for everyone. If you want to have a good time and be a chill person and do good work and have good vibes, we got a global frequency, right? You got to harmonize with that global frequency. So, I mean, that's kind of the way that I live my life. Come on in, the water's nice, make the right kind of waves. You make the bad waves, no one's going to want to be around you.
There's a saying, and it's the idea that you have two options. You could throw trash on the floor, or you could pick the trash up, and then if somebody behind you throws trash on the floor, you say, hey, we don't do that here. And then you pick it up, and then eventually, even if trash is all around you, trash will eventually disintegrate, and you change the entire culture. And it's sort of a mentality that, if we all actually act like adults and start doing certain things, comics would be a lot better. It would be less political. And I think, everybody would be much happier in the entire comics fair. And I think that's a big issue. And I think that, certain people just don't know how to do that. And I also don't think COVID helped people in a lot of ways.
COVID did not help a lot people in a lot of ways because everyone got on social media and watched the news like it was entertainment. And then everyone became very opinionated, and because we're all so connected through social media, everyone started fighting with everyone else. And it was very disheartening. And I understand why you needed to watch 5 straight days of anime. I get it. I get the need to just kind of like zoop, bring yourself in and focus in on what it is you're doing, because so much of like what's going on right now can be disheartening. Like you said, comics could be less political, but everyone's got something that they need to say, and they should be able to say it, but it's just, how are you saying it? How are you talking about it?
I mean, I don't think anybody should say anything, to be honest, because I think that most of it, and I think people should learn to keep things to themselves, and I think we would all get along better. That's not saying you don't have the right to say it, but there is a point where sometimes it's better to shut the fuck up You know,
I was talking about comics. I was talking about the medium of expression and creative art. Yeah. I wasn't talking about mean tweets. No, man, like just, you know, I wasn't talking about mean tweets. That's just gasoline on a fire. You know, Twitter can be a dumpster fire. So can any social media platform if it's not used. I guess, you know, if people aren't copacetic in there, it's a community, right? Like you said, trash on the floor. People just throwing trash on the floor everywhere. There's lots of trash.
And then you have
we all need to not throw trash. But I'm agreeing with you saying that comics could be a lot less political, even though everyone has something to say about the state of politics or the state of international affairs or one social issue versus another. Like everyone has something inside of them that they need to say. A lot of it gets said very blatantly and in short amount of characters and pointedly on social media. And I think that that's destructive. That also bleeds over into art, and then that art becomes one note and it doesn't resonate well. And then it becomes destructive, both to the medium and art itself. I think if people were more conscious of how they expressed that in art, comics would seem a lot less political, but they'd still be political. Just like when you're talking about, you know, everyone likes to say Marvel Comics has always been, you know, modern commentary. It's the world outside your window. It's always been political. Yeah, but like, look at how they talked about politics. It was a lot different. Subtext was subtext. It was not the text. You know, we left comic book issues on the top, and then the real world social issues on the bottom. And the comic book issues, the drama, the plots, the character interactions, where you could see the real world reflected, that was the beauty of it. You know, that's why the art is so good as far as like an art form. I think some of us may have lost our way there, and I'm really encouraged to see a lot of us are trying to find our way back. And I say us because, man, we're all in it together, right? Comic artists and writers, like they're comic artists and writers. Like you said earlier, it's a community, it's an environment. We're all doing it together. If you're in the big ocean of comics, you're in comics. No matter what you're doing, you're in comics. If you're making comics.
I'm tied to it, and I don't know how I'm exactly. And technically, I'm in comics because I comment on comics. I do a lot of comic interviews. I'm a comic book investor, and I do a lot of that and a lot of speculation. And it's weird because I think it goes even further because obviously I haven't produced something yet, but I'm big commentating on it, and it's so interesting where it's all going, and it is a fascinating entity. And indie is one of the most interesting components of it, and that thing has exploded in the last 3 years, particularly in the last 2. I think it is
in the last 2. Yeah, absolutely. The last 3 definitely, like you saw the ramp up. The last 2, and this past year I think has been the best year in indie, just for the sheer number of talented, interesting creators that have either just appeared on the scene to make their mark for the first time, or have been making their mark but finally hit their stride, you know, and now it's like, yeah, you've got a brand, you're doing it, you know, like you've got a thing, we're invested in this, we're on the train, we're, you know, going for a ride, you've got a thing going, and you made it, you just get bigger from here. So I think it's been a very exciting past year, despite maybe stuff in the world being somewhat disheartening as far as being in indie comics. Man, it's been fantastic. Like I can't say that there's been a lot of bad stuff going on.
It's a very interesting thing because obviously the way I view it, and this is just from the comic book investor, and a bunch of us have all these discussions in other groups and all the groups that have like literally 100 members, is that we don't know as far as investing purposes what it looks like, because this is a whole new anomaly, and it's very interesting, and it's also very concerning because both DC, Marvel, Image, and even Dark Horse, Dynamite, and Titan, with what Titan's doing. And Titan's a sleeper, guys. I'm telling you, Titan Comics. It's a sleeper in the comic book world. You know, come November and December, it's going to be a very interesting tune with them. They got a very cool book coming out. But it's very interesting to see that, like, we're all having discussions in these groups about Kickstarter, saying, okay, what's going to be the breakout book? And it's weird because there's so much good talent, there's so much good concepts, and then you throw in Substack and all that stuff, and then that just makes it even more complicated. And so I'm curious how you guys feel about that, because that's sort of the big, thing. Before we talk about rewards.
We haven't even talked about the campaign. I think I'm of dual minds on this. I think crowdfunding is a great place for you to start cultivating an audience. If you can sell your book through crowdfunding, not necessarily just relying on the algorithm or relying on the platform to do the work for you. If you can cultivate a group of people that support you, collaborators you want to work with, and fans who want to prop you up by investing in your book before it's even on the stands, that's great. Because these people haven't even seen your book. They're investing in the idea of your book, but they're really investing in you as a creator because they have confidence in you. And if you can deliver to them, you've proven yourself in that instance to be reliable. You're the type of creator, and you do it yourself. It's start to finish. You're doing the writing. You have an artist you bring on. That means that you're managing the art. If you're a writer-artist, you're solely responsible for creating that book. If you're an artist hiring a writer, then you're working with someone to tell your story through their dialogue and their scripting of it. Like it's regardless of what you're doing, it is all on you to bring that project to life. I'm lucky to have Freak Girl here, be able to be like my left hemisphere.
Yeah.
Left hemisphere is the creative hemisphere or the business hemisphere? Which one's the math hemisphere? Right. Okay, so you have the right one. You should be on this side.
I think.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky for her to share the brain and take on the workload, because I don't know how single people all on their own
individuals
do it. I don't know how individuals.
It is hard. It is hard.
And that's the thing.
Big props.
Seriously, my heart goes out to these people, and I'm like, bro, you put out a crazy good book. You ran a solid campaign. You hit good numbers, and you fulfilled. People need to know about you. You did it, which is why I love crowdfunding. Now, I also feel that crowdfunding is getting more reliable. Early on, there were a lot of people who participated in maybe what some people would call a grift, or a game where they
didn't realize.
Exactly the road wasn't trod. It's right. If we came out or onto the scene 3 years ago, we wouldn't have had all the material that we studied to study. So I'd say early on, the crowdfunding was like the Wild West. It was like the wild frontier. Now it's getting more populated, and people are building more sophisticated things, and which is why I'd say this is the best year yet, because I've seen newbies show up on the scene, brand spanking new out of nowhere. All they've been doing is kind of either backing crowdfunded books or being in the indie scene, seeing what's going on, and then boom, they show up and the book is stellar. It looks fantastic. They're exciting. They're enthusiastic. They have a good mannerism. They know how to sell, and they're approachable, and they're just fun on stream. I'll invest in you, and then I get the book, and the book's great. It's great for an indie, right? But people are starting to less and less know what even that means. It's just a good book. It's got good art, good story. It's what I wanted.
Yeah, lines are getting very blurry, and but also what's happening, and this is my experience, is that even though I think everything has gotten better and it's been exponentially, there's still a bunch of bad stuff out there, and also there's a bunch of problems still occurring in it, and it's getting harder and harder.
I could see that. I backed 350 projects this year. Not 350 back, 350 projects in indie comics. I can say quite confidently that the overwhelming majority of those projects are from creators who want to make cool comics. There are a couple people out there that they want to do what it is that they want to do, and they're kind of, pissing in the pool. Whatever, man. I'm not on that side of the pool. I'm on the vanishing edge, chilling with my boys, kicking back, I'm having a good time. And 250 of those 300 projects were spectacular successes in my eyes, even if they weren't the best books out there. They were from creators who really wanted to create good stuff and, bring the best that they could to the market. The one danger I think we're in right now is that I think crowdfunding is going to become unsustainable.
I think we've got a lot.
I think the other thing too is that it's massively oversaturated.
Yeah, that's it.
And one of the things, and I don't know if you know this, but Keanu Reeves, Scott Snyder, Jeff Lemire, Charles Soule, Ryan Brown came in, Todd McFarlane came in, and it's the idea that a rising tide raises all ships. And so more projects, because of those 5 or 6 people, were funded. Now, granted, some of those goals were only $500, but still, that counts as a full funded. If you had a goal of $500 and then you did 1,000, that's phenomenal. And I'm rooting for you, because if all you needed was small printing, hey, more power to you. And I'm on your team and I'm rooting for you. But then when they left, that tide went down and less projects got funded. And so it created a whole problem where you bring all the air into the room, and that's great because nobody's complaining. But then when you take out the air, then everybody has a problem because now there's less funding. And now,
I mean, it goes both ways. You know, like people, it's cyclical. People get interested in a comic book, so they hunt around for comic books. Like, we're all goldfish, right? It's just that some of us have longer attention spans than others. I get a bug up my butt about something where I like get fascinated about it, and I gotta go get this game, and I gotta get like the book, and I gotta get the thing, and I really love this IP, and then like 6 weeks later I forgot all about it. You know, it's people do this.
I'm on an anime kick right now.
Right now. But 9 months ago, were you binging anime? Maybe, but you were binging a different series.
I was watching a lot of wrestling.
Nice.
Dude, I love wrestling too. Did you know that Daniel Warren Johnson's putting out a wrestling book? You got to check it out. You know, free plug, but he's fantastic. He's one of my favorite artists right now and inspirations. Yeah. Quick note about the rising tide thing. It does go both ways. What were you saying about Image? Isn't Image like
Image
crowdfunding every #1 that they currently have?
I don't know if it's every, but a lot of Joe Benitez is brought Lady Mechanica to Image, and he has his crowdfunder up for Lady Mechanica #1 at Image, and it's funding, like, through their goals, are funding the next few comic books, but that's through Image. There were a couple of other ones.
There's several
I can
projects.
picture the cover of it. I can't think of the name. There were a bunch of them that I saw that are being published through Image, but they're on Kickstarter.
Image ain't indie. You know what I mean? Like, Image is straight up mainstream.
So to talk about that, because that seems kind of tricky. And I like Scott Snyder, and Scott was like, I'm going to go build, his black press or black jacket press or whatever it was. And then you built that entire thing on Kickstarter. I'm like, that's not really self-building it though. That's using OPM, other people's money, to build it. And I don't have a problem.
Yes, that's true. But if we look at the world of business, it's all OPM. It's always finding investors, angel investors, shareholders, stakeholders, and whatever to get their money to do the thing that they're investing in. And I think crowdfunding is the exact same thing. It's just that what they're backing isn't a long position in the company where they get dividends and returns on that investment. They get a book, and they get the first edition, first printing and all the exclusives.
Special, yeah.
But I think in the world of business, it is always other people's money. It's not like you can start something with nothing and go everywhere from nowhere. Like, he would have to bring all of his money to the table and make it a thing. And all of us invest. That's the thing. Like, it's not entirely other people's money. You're also bringing in your own. Like, we spent quite a bit of money. I spent the entirety of my disposable income for the past 2 years on just the research, the R&D side of it. And then there was personal investment on like the art, the graphic design, the production side of it. And I don't even know if I'm going to like fully recoup all of that. But the thing is, what I'm doing is I'm building a brand. It's like Amazon didn't make a profit for the first 5 years of its existence. But by the time it had built up its base and people saw the proof of concept in it, that it delivered and it did what it said it was going to do, the thing that the dude built in his garage became, multi-million-dollar industry. Maybe it's not the best example because, it's the unicorn. But my point is that like crowdfunding is proof of concept. You prove that you have the concept, people invest in it, you deliver it. I think it's one of the best methods that we have, but I think it's unsustainable because, like you said, the market's oversaturated. So many people are coming in, and there's a differing degree to the amount that like people are serious about it. Some people are coming and thinking like, oh, I'm going to fulfill this in 2 years. Let's ruin it for the rest of us, because
we kind of need you to deliver now so that people are confident and can back us. We can't have them waiting for you to deliver before they back another project. We want them to back us now, you know? So
it's also with me, and right now money's tight. I back, I try to back one project a month. And so I have to be very selective. I have personal covenants. I have personal covenants in my own investing and securing my future. And I'm backing projects that I like, that I'm interested in. And obviously that's sort of the challenge for this year, saying what project am I going to back? And I back both, just indie people for $10 and I back somebody for $40. And, it's tricky because there's a lot of good stuff coming out. But I also think that there's only so many times you could shear, the sheep. Or you can't keep milking the cow, for lack of a better word, before you kill it. And I think that that's part of the problem, too, is that if there's 1,200 Kickstarter projects coming out and each of them is averaging $20, at a certain point, people are going to run out of money.
Right.
And there's going to be a position where, it's just like, and then somebody runs out of money and then they're in debt and then they're going to be like, I'm not going back, because legitimately you killed their economic wallet. And it's too much. I feel that there almost has to be like a slow down point.
Well, there are alternatives, and that's what people are trying to explore right now. It's like we jumped onto the crowdfunding train. It's a riot, man. We're loving like the locomotive speeding by, but we all know that like there's an end of the line, and you don't want to be the last guy on the train, when it goes off the cliff. So we're all of us are looking for ways to add alternative revenue streams to fund the projects that we want to keep making and provide them to our fan bases in different ways other than expecting the platform and the customers coming to the platform to do that. Now, a lot of people are doing Patreon. Some people are doing their own websites. Some people, of course, you're going to distributions. There are a lot of different distributors in the game right now, and it's really like a fun time for people to be hooking up with distributors just shopping the field for IPs, being selective, because there are so many people that want to go to stores. I don't necessarily know if I want to do it that way. Another side, entirely digital. People are going to Comixology and they're going up on Webtoon, and they're making direct sales, like people getting subscribers on Substack. There's lots of different ways by which independent artists and creators are trying to monetize. I think crowdfunding is a part of it, but it can't be the entirety of the plan, and it can't be the only ecosystem that you're a part of. One of the reasons I think we managed to get successful on the crowdfunding that we ran is that we didn't just market ourselves inside of independent comics or just inside of the mecha fandom, with various people who like, Gunpla, or who play mech video games, or who stream, or, whatever. Like we reached out even further beyond that to try and tap markets of people who would be interested in our stuff, because you're only going to run so many crowdfunded campaigns before it's like, okay, this is old hat. What am I doing with the rest of it? Like I see a lot of people, they get this, they start small, they grow, they get like a great success, and then it just kind of dies down. There are a bunch of people that's not true for. There's some select few people that it's just meteoric rise after meteoric rise, and the numbers just get bigger and bigger and bigger. But for a lot of the creators that I've seen, especially the ones on Kickstarter, it's like they do something, they get better, they get big success, and then the success is still there, it's successful, but it's smaller, and then it's smaller, and it's like the fulfillment of running it as a crowdfunder, it's not as rewarding or fulfilling. I want to get it out to people a different way, and that's when you start talking about doing all of these different things. Luckily for us, this is our first time, our first campaign. We've got MAVRICS Origins Part 2 to crowdfund, absolutely. I'm looking at ways to kind of bring MAVRICS Evolution to the world in a way that's bigger than just asking people to invest in a project that will by that time be tested and proven and good.
bring it to people on a bigger scale. I mean, I don't even know if stores are the way to go. I don't know how people want to sell their products these days. Everything's in flux. Some people want to do distribution through Amazon. I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I want to give Amazon 30% of my sales. Like, I don't know. All of these things are stuff that I'm going to have to explore.
I give eBay 13% of my sales. When I'm selling, comics on eBay, it's tricky. It's so interesting, everything that's going on.
Would you do me a favor? I want to ask you a question for a second. Can you answer a question for me?
Before you do, I do need to talk about my alternative revenue stream. Because I have a wide read. And so, obviously, before you get to ask me a question, then we're going to get to rewards. My friend Honor Vincent currently has an amazing Kickstarter going on called New Rat City. And so New Rat City basically takes place in 2083, and all that's left in New York City after years of floods, pests, and infrastructure mismanagement is northern Manhattan and a few enclaves in the Bronx and Staten Island. And the only people keeping the city habitable for its few remaining residents are the pest controllers, and they aren't allowed to kill anything. And in New Rat City, one pest controller is about to discover how the mystery of her mother's disappearance is related to the monster tearing her flooding, rat-plagued city apart. And so New Rat City is actually live on Kickstarter right now. I was sold on the concept of it, and the art is phenomenal. It's slaying. I think it's almost actually funded, and it's an amazing book. And the reward for, I think, just the physical book is about $11. It's relatively cheap. I think the variant is also $11, and it's extremely affordable. And it's one of those things that just looks awesome, and it's so different. And obviously, I live in Connecticut, so I am somewhat of a New York fan, and it might be one of those books that you are going to regret not picking up. So I definitely recommend it. It's in the chat, everybody, the entire thing. And so I recommend go checking it out because it's going to be one of those books that I think you will be very regretful of missing. It's also extremely affordable, which is why I like it. So now you can ask me a question.
All right. So I have people that I know who engage in comic book trades via eBay rather than doing like direct sales or listings on comic book websites where, like people buy, trade, and sell comic books. There is a current, I guess, debate about buying books through crowdfunding, getting more books than you need, and then selling the variant covers on eBay at a much higher price than what they were sold at on the crowdfunder. Is that form of speculation something that you should just expect because it's the market? Or do you feel that that's maybe taking advantage of a system? I don't know. How do you feel?
I'm going to just ask the clarify.
Tell me how you feel about eBay flipping.
So I'll talk about it from mainstream, and then I'll talk about it on Kickstarter. Because I don't do it on Kickstarter, but I buy a bunch of Zenescope books, and I buy multiple copies. And so if a book is $20, my goal is to flip it for 60. And that's the goal. And then also I'm a Zenescope VIP, which means that I pay $100 one time and you get access to VIP books. And then I buy those books and then I flip those books. And I legitimately have made a killing. And I have had an EV, which is an expected value, that is at least 5 figures. Just in money in the stock market that was put in due to comics, it was in that range. And that has obviously grown massively more than that. So I am a flipper. I don't have a problem with flipping. And Zenescope as a company, and they don't have no problem saying it because I was on the show and I said it, they want that because that's good for their business. And so I've never flipped a book because I'm buying it because I just want to put it up on Instagram, the book, but from Kickstarter. But I do understand that certain books may or may not increase in value. And everything that I buy as a seller, and as a consumer will at some point get sold, whether it's by me, whether it's by my kids, whether, something happens, whether, God forbid, there's an emergency in my family and I need cash. I know that's going on. And also I just picked up a wholesale package that had a bunch of variants in it from somebody that's listed up on eBay, and it was $35 and I have it up for value at $100. So I'm not making a killing. So I outlaid 35. eBay is going to be taking $13 off of that. So I'm at 48. So I'm making $52 on the entire thing in profit, which isn't a lot of money. So I don't know if that's flipping per se.
No, I mean, technically it is, because it's you know, it's profiting off of the sale of the book. But I don't know if it's like buying it low. You know, that's a good question. Is that technically?
It was wholesale to me, essentially.
So I don't know if that's flipping then.
So if you're a comic shop and you get a wholesale price, and then you get a book that typically goes for $20, but you bought it for 10, that's not flipping if it was wholesale to you. And obviously I'm a retailer, but there are books that I've gotten that are phenomenal. And I know that like a Steph Wilson, that's a good example. I don't think he's going to mind. I think certain Steph Wilson covers go for good money, and you legitimately can go sell certain Steph Wilsons, and if you paid 15 for it, it might be worth 45. And that's why people might buy a few copies of them. Now, I haven't done it myself, but I've seen it. Jim Noble spoke about this, where he has certain books that I've gone. I don't know if they were Kickstarted, but those books are like $60 books and they cost 20. And I mean, we're not talking like buying a book for 10 bucks and then it's worth 1,000. I haven't seen that in Kickstarter, but I've seen books that were 20 bucks go for 60 sometimes. But I think it's fine. I personally don't have a problem with it, because that's just the marketplace. Because all the times it works, there's at least 3 times it doesn't. And so the times it's working, it's just the type of situation that's happening. It's also, I mean, you said you did a bunch of R&D and you have a bunch of Billy Tucci covers. Those things are worth good money, and
they are now, absolutely.
And so that's at a certain point, you might say, hey, look, I need to fund something, or you might say, hey, it's time for me to downsize, and while I like these books, it's time to say goodbye. And I've done that too in my collection. And I cried on some books, but I was getting really good money. When you buy a book for 25 bucks and you sell for 150, I mean, it's hard to say no. But also I treated that money like God's money, where it went right into dividend producing stocks. And so the asset and the growth of it is changed my life, and I'm trying to avoid being poor. And so,
fair enough, man.
That I'm talking about this on Thursday night, everybody, on another show. So it's a very interesting thing. But again, as I was stating, in the Kickstarter world and in the comic book investing world, like all of us as comic book investors, there's big divides on where it's going. Because I'm looking for the next big thing, and I'm looking for something that's going to make me money with comics. I'm an artist guy, and there's some serious debates in these groups between where is the next big deal. And some people are very old school and say, hey, Marvel, DC, Image are the place to go, or second or third grade, more mainstream comics. I think Titan Comics is a big play, and I think it's going to be very interesting in December with a book that's coming out that's in previews right now, the Cowboy Bebop comics that are coming. I think those things are going to be sleepers, and I think people are going to regret not picking them up. And I think, Gun Honey is another one that's going to be a sleeper by Titan.
Yep.
And that book looks amazing.
You just got New Rat City a backer, by the way.
Oh, great. They're going to be happy. I got them like 9 backers in the last.
Oh, they're fully funded, man. They're all good. They're crushing it, and they got 20 days left.
Well, hopefully they'll buy another ad, because I need the money.
Yeah.
OPM, guys, OPM. For all those who are wondering, actually, all this money winds up actually going right back into this project, because while my sponsor does cover a bunch of stuff, the more money I have, the more materials I can buy, the more, I guess, merch, or not merch. I can't even spin equipment. That's the word. That's the word. And also just Facebook ads and a variety of other things that it takes to run this, and also making sure that if, God forbid, I don't have a sponsor, I can continue to do this, because that's where all that goes to. But anyway, I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. I just want to know, ethically, do you think it is a viable source of income that does not disrespect the creator to purchase something on a crowdfunder that is a limited run, and then turn around and sell it for profit at premium on eBay to people who didn't get the limited run on Kickstarter?
So I don't. That's tough because
it's morality of economics, man. It's a very tough question, and I hate when people bring it up every time in the chat. It kills it in the chat every time.
I want to counter this with the mainstream argument. So Zenescope does a lot of 250 print runs and a lot of 350 print runs. So is it ethically that if a book is limited to 250 copies and it's being done by mainstream to do it? Because if it's not, I don't think it's ethically wrong that I'm flipping a Zenescope book. Or even if I'm limited to only one of them and I still flip it, I don't think it's ethically wrong because I didn't hurt the creator by any stretch of the imagination because they got their money. It's not like I said the book was damaged, the book was not damaged, and then I sold it and they sent me a second copy. You know, that's more ethically wrong. And so I don't think it's ethically wrong in mainstream if you have a limited edition book and then somebody does a limited edition on Kickstarter and then you sell it and somebody wants to buy it. I mean, I believe in free capitalism, free marketplace, free enterprise. And I just think that if a creator knows that's going to happen, they have to price that in. And,
bro, I'm happy.
I mean, Larry Higgins was speaking. What?
Marked up prices. That
so
means
Larry
that
Higgins,
my book is valuable. I'm all for it, right?
So Larry Higgins was telling this
there
story.
It is.
No, but this is relevant where some guy bought 2 or 3 copies of a book he had, and then Larry had a bunch of them. And then he basically Larry put up one book to purposely force the guy to lower his prices. And so if you're a creator and you want to ethically change it, we all know that first book that comes in the market, you get whatever price you want for it. You know, books that don't appear, if there's only 4 books in the marketplace, all 4 of those books are going to go for $5 within each other. But if there's 100 of those books, or there's 3 books in there and then another book comes in, well, that's going to ethically lower the price of the other book if now there's 6 books in there. So I just think sellers and Kickstarters and people who are running those need to know that, hey, if this book is red hot, then I need to factor that into my price.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it is that I think that's a fair position. But you know, a lot of stuff I buy on Kickstarter for myself personally, I just want it in my collection for a while. I'm going to be holding on to this stuff for 5-6 years at minimum. So I don't know if that's flipping at that point.
I think the answer does become sell your own book on eBay once you're done with the Kickstarter. If people are marking it up like 1,000%, like you said, take control of the market value by being the person providing more product than the people who are manipulating the market value.
Or better yet, you know, it is just count it as your bonus. Where save 10 of them and say, hey, you know what it is? If I sold this book on Kickstarter for $25, I'll put it up on eBay for $60. And you know what it is? I'll just take the extra money, I'll get rid of my product, and I'll be thrilled. And everybody's happy because, especially if somebody's asking 100, because the 10 people got it, well, they got it cheaper. And they're going to be thrilled because they feel that they did better than you know, the other person that's going to force the whole thing. But I definitely want to talk about rewards.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the perfect time to segue into talking about covers, tiers, and rewards.
So obviously digital, I love digital. I'm in the US, but I speak to a lot of people who are international. And let's be realistic, shipping is extremely difficult right now. It's expensive international, and it also things can happen. And well, you know, it's cheaper, and so that's pretty self-explanatory. But then we get into the basic covers, and we're gonna go through them, and hopefully I have them in the right order. So I think this is the first one.
That's the Ken Marion cover, yeah.
That's the first variant, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to correct me on this. So obviously, what is the story behind this, and who did it exactly, and all that stuff?
The Ken Marion from DC did it.
He did the pencils and inks, and Andrew Dahlhaus did,
the colors. This is our Maverick hotshot. He's Storm 01. He is armed with twin Ocelot rotating cylinder cannons, and he is running down the side of a building. So it's just really cool dynamic action. VKen really, went all out trying to make this thing just look over the top and awesome. He went I took a stylistic approach that kind of embellished some things, but I love that. I love when artists like look at your stuff and then they do their own riff on it. I think it makes it look really cool. It makes it look like a cool variation of like the traditional style. Honestly, I feel like it makes my designs look more boring, but it's exciting, right?
Yeah, and I like it because it's very much an action, scene, and it's very anime-ish, and I also like just the background, and it looks like it's sort of on a building in ruins and all that stuff.
Yep.
And then
his name is actually on the his name is on the marquee on the building too, right there in the middle on the bottom. That's where he signed it on that pink marquee.
That's super cool in that one. And then there's this one.
This one is the Jaquan Park cover.
Yep. He did it soup to nuts. That's all him. I've
been remiss in editing the time lapse and getting it out there.
Yeah, we have a time lapse video from him. It's been a lot.
Put the time lapse out there of him actually doing the cover. It's great promotional material. But he's fantastic. You might know him from some of his projects out there. He's pretty established. Kill Watch, was it? I think it was Kill Switch or Kill Watch.
And he did the Conan series.
And he did Conan, over at Marvel. Yep.
And so I like this one because obviously we have a nice green background and sort of the calm before the storm, I feel.
Kill Watch. I was right.
Yeah, I think it's a gorgeous cover. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that actually features those rebels that I was talking about. The refugees / rebels that have been fighting against the occupying force that are looking for extraction. Those are them in the foreground, sort of marching their way out, led by their chief, Ganbatar. He's awesome. I love him.
He has a good character.
I know he has a tiger pelt. That was Garrett's decision because why not? I know it's Mongolia. We don't have Bengal tiger, like albino Bengal tigers, but whatever. Maybe it's synthetic. Who knows?
And then might as well.
It's responsibly sourced, ethically sourced. That's what they call it, right? This is a Luigi Terrell.
You can sell this one on eBay for those who want to.
Yeah, this is a Luigi Terrell cover. This is Mother, the main character, or the protagonist, I should say, leader of the Storm Squad. And it's just, I don't know if I can say more than it's a Luigi Terrell cover. It's a pinup cover. It's beautiful. He did a really good job with the details. I love the pink. I love the gradient. I love that it's vertical. It's a different place for the name, like the title of the book, to be like incorporated that way into the art. I think it's really cool.
It is nice to have different covers and have it done the way it's done, and also having the name by the side, because it's always nice to mix things up in covers.
I like the color palettes too. Like the color palettes on all of the covers are pretty much different. The main cover is that like standard OD green Akira homage, which Garrett didn't quite know how to do a Akira homage off the bat, but then he figured it out, and it's gorgeous, and I love it. It's the one on the basics. I don't even think we have it listed as a cover on the campaign because we only show the variants. But it's just in the tiers. That's the only place.
I didn't put a big one of it. I probably should have done that.
After this, we have the Adele. Yeah, that's Adele Fakri, also known as Control Alt Delete. This is a Ripper. Ripper has a chain gun, a GAU Avenger chain gun. It's awesome. It goes Burt. Yeah, I love his style. I love the fact that he did it in sort of a different setting. The snow-covered frosty landscape is definitely featured prominently in the book. We do have like a big fight in the snow, but he also like made it populated like in an area where you would imagine to see this thing walking around people, what it would be like if you encountered this in the daily life. So it's really cool to see how he measured up the people against the size of the Mav, and the way that he just kind of integrated it into the cityscape. And I love the way that the graphic on the name and the logo just sort of like pops out against that gray blue sky,
and he has the snow like kind of floating in front of it, which I thought was cool.
And then we got this one too. And this one, just what it is in a lot of ways. I don't know how to describe this one.
This one is Ricardo Silva did the pencils. Peter Palmiotti did the
I like Ricardo Silva a lot.
Yep. Yeah. He did Tragedy on Kickstarter with Phil Russert. Yeah, Phil Russert's comic Tragedy.
And then Marcos Martins.
And Marcos Martins did the colors. So it's like a big, 3 people pulling together to make this cover awesome. I love Peter. Peter's a bro. He's been a friend of ours in indie comics since I think the inception. I think I got into the indie scene through Marsh, and I think the first couple of people that we met were on the AAA Discord, and Peter was one of them. And so we've just been kind of buds for the past year, popping on each other's streams and stuff and talking behind the scenes and hanging out.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah, he really is. And he loves cats. So.
Yeah.
And then this one.
That's actually not a cover.
So that's just for the teaser. That's not the
that's the teaser.
That's actually a splash page in the book.
Yeah.
We just used one of the interior splash pages as the cover. So that's an interior page. We just slapped the logo on. They're like, it's good enough. It could work. It could be a cover, if we wanted.
And then this is just some art.
This is, we call it the combat collage because it's kind of a tease of what you're going to see later in the book, because the first third of the book is sort of like, I don't want to say it's setup, it's backdrop, it's build up. You get the context for everything. You get put into the situation.
It's the setup they use in Gundam, where you have to deal with all the politics and deal with all the stuff, because before you. But
it's mostly like the interpersonal stuff and seeing because I don't give any exposition dumps. I'm very, very sparse with the information that I give you, and I give it through organic, direct dialogue where you piece it together. My audience is smart. I know you guys are smart enough to figure it out. So it's not like I'm leaving it purposefully cryptic and you'll never get it. But I'm also not sitting down and going, in the future, this happened, and this is what you know at the beginning of the text scroll on the first page, because I think that's boring. I want you to get into the book. The first third is set up like that. The second third is the execution of the beginning of the mission, heightening the drama, the tension. And the last third is just explosive fighting. So the combat collage is kind of an allusion to the fact that you're going to see all these things happen.
But we didn't want to give any
actual images because, like I said, the one thing I can't spoil is the art and the excitement that you're going to have reading the book, because the interiors are great. The sequentials are great. We really threw our all into these pages. So that's the one thing I can't spoil unless I show them to you. So I couldn't show them to you.
And then there's a bunch of other stuff out there as well. So obviously there's the Everything package, which has just a bunch
That's got a secret cover on it. That's got a wraparound X-Men homage by Pau Rodrigues that has all of the characters on this nice fold-out cover. And I always forget who colored that. Carlos Moreno. Jeez, Carlos, I'm so sorry, bro. I always blank.
He's bad with names. That's why I'm here.
Honestly, I couldn't remember your Twitter handle, and you gave it to me 5 minutes ago.
And then even going further, there's
sitting there in his screen name too, and I can't freaking figure it out.
Okay. Sorry, Andrew, what were you saying?
It's all good. It's all good. And then there's obviously a bunch of other cool stuff. So you have add-ons of a metal lunchbox with some perks, obviously backup, mags, as you call it, magazines or comic books. I think there's an ash can that could be thrown in there. There's a T-shirt. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff going on with some stretch goals that are really cool.
20 stretch goals.
I don't think all of them are not unlocked yet, right?
We're up to the motion comic.
Yeah,
so all 20, it's actually 22 that are unlocked. 23, 4, and 5 are not. But we had 25 total, 20 unlocked, and then 22 because of the two totals combined. Those two prints are now also unlocked.
And then obviously there's some other cool stuff going on where you have Operation Gratitude. For those who are unaware, there's a bunch of different things that can be done with it. It's a charity. Obviously, there's a lot of fundraising, a lot of other things that are going on with it, and obviously you're doing books. And
yeah, so we're donating 2 books for every 10 backers that we get, and 1 ash can, and they're going to active military personnel, veterans, and first responders, because comic books are awesome, and I want to get my books out there to people who want to read comic books. And a lot of the people that I know who enlisted in the military, when they said they came back, like the only thing that they had from home was comics and Sour Patch Kids and the little bits of culture that sort of made their way overseas. And I want to provide that if I can, because it's important. And yeah, so we're up to, gosh, how many? 300 divided by 10 is 30, times 2 is 60, plus what's 50, so 5 times 2 is 10, so 70, about 73 comic books going out right now.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of stuff, and then obviously there's just a lot of perks, and whatever you pretty much want, you can get from this. You get extra mags, so obviously, because tiers can get really expensive. You have I think it's like a $20 tier for just regular A, and then whatever variant you want is $50, and obviously you don't want to kill people and make them pay $50 twice. And so that's why the extra back.
The variants are the same cover cost as the regular comic.
Yeah.
And the comic is 60 pages. It's oversized. It's perfect bound. It's high quality spot gloss. We did the works on it, but we're also at $20 as a price point. And do you want to take it?
I was going to say, so for the variant covers, you're getting the main book, the variant cover, the ash can, and the metal print. So that's why it's
5x7 metal
50, because you're getting 3 books and a print.
If you were getting the regular cover, it would be 20. The secondary cover would be 20, and the ash can is 10. And then we throw in the metal print on top of all of that with all the stretch goals and all these other things, plus the original print and the bookmark that you get on the basic tier. Yeah. And of course the digital download, that's part of it. And
we want to give you all the stuff we can.
We took a hit on shipping a little bit. We took a hit and we did flat rate international shipping
to try and make it
fair, even though it's so not fair. So like for the big box, the collector's box is a serious package, man. It's the big package. It's like 3 inches plus thick. It's 12 inches or 12.5 inches long, and
10 by 13.
Yeah, it's 10 by 13. And it weighs over 8 pounds, so it's like a brick, so shipping it was a pain. It was $90-something to go to the UK. We cut that down. We cut it down by half,
obviously.
So like we tried to set it. We took a little bit of a hit on that, but whatever. I want people to have the book.
Yeah, and shipping is a pain in the ass, and this time of the year doesn't help anybody. I just had to raise my entire eBay store shipping by $1. Because that's called the United States Post Office. It's called the Holiday Fair, and that's going to be pretty much in effect till February. So if you're buying books from me on eBay, I'm sorry. You're going to have to deal with it. It's your problem, not mine.
It's the Postal Service's problem. So it's not your fault. It's because of the Postal Service.
And so obviously, I want to back out of Kickstarter. It's an amazing project. I'm super stoked for it. I just have to go find $20 now, and I'm going to go rob a bank. You're all now part of a conspiracy. But having said that, I am very curious where you foresee conventions going, because we spoke about Kickstarter.
I love conventions.
Where do you see them going, and where do you see the changes happening and all that stuff?
We just did the little local circuit of conventions in our area in Connecticut. We did Terrificon, we did Boston Fan Expo, we did Kineticon, we did GamerCon. We didn't make it to Rhode Island for the Granite City, which is sad. But they adapted really well to the new regulations and stuff. Mohegan-Sun was a great place to hold the conventions because it's tribal land, which means they set their own laws.
And everyone was really good about the
distancing
masking
and
the distancing.
Yeah. It was because everyone wanted to be
really
there.
Well organized, and people, they weren't on top of each other. It wasn't super crowded. I know Kineticon, there were like, you had to show either a negative COVID test or a vaccine or something like that. So, but I think that's what he's talking about, like coming back from that. So like everything was run really well.
or even how like they're handling, spacing of the booths and panels and events and things like that, because cons are a very intimate thing, and especially anime cons. And Kineticon, I know, is more in the anime world versus in the comic world. And obviously people like taking pictures, and also a lot of people view this as a social thing, and it's kind of their event. And I'm an anime weeboo in a lot of ways, because I haven't been to a con in a while. So I'm a little bit out of the loop. I'm a little bit rusty.
I'll tell you what I saw. I mean, I got a ton of photos that I could share with you. A lot of cosplays. People stopping
My
posing.
wrestling friend was wrestling at Kineticon. And
yeah,
he
was. Awesome. Yeah, it's great. We saw
Logan Black. Logan Black. What? He was Wolverine's son, whose name I am.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
He was wrestling, and it was a crazy show. I was in Pittsburgh, unfortunately. I couldn't go.
People, for the most part, there wasn't like a whole lot of social distancing, but it was because at Kineticon you had to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test. So it was assumed that if you were there, you didn't have COVID, or it didn't show up, or who knows. But everyone was good about the masks. There were places like where people would eat, like it was people gave each other the courtesy of space when they were eating in like the eating cafeteria area. But everywhere else, people were masked up and just kind of abiding by guidelines.
Yeah, and the aisles were much wider.
I didn't see anyone like policing masking or anything.
They made announcements. We didn't really go into the panels because we had a booth. Yeah. So we were kind of stuck in our spot. Like we'd tag out and walk around a little bit.
I streamed from the convention. Yeah. I streamed, and my viewers made me go shopping.
Yeah.
It's fun. We did it 3 times, and they made me go around and like go to the different stalls and vendors and talk to them and see what comics they had or what goods they were selling or whatever. In fact, Oliver in the chat made me buy a old Sega Genesis Shinobi game. And that's why I now own a retro Sega Genesis gaming console and controllers so that we could play that Shinobi.
Now I have to figure out
it was a lot of fun. It was a good time. I had a good time.
No, it's going to be a while before I go back to a con for a lot of reasons. All my money's going into this. And it's unfortunate when, and I'm way more influential online than I've ever been before in my life. And I used to do a lot of cons, and I did about 50 panels over 10 years. And,
what if you did remote viewing, or not remote viewing, because that would like imply that you're clairvoyant. What if you did like a remote conference video thing on Zoom? You could be on a panel, right? You could be a talking head on a monitor, like Zordon or something.
I don't know if I want to go back.
Okay. It's fair, man.
So you've never done panels, so I don't know.
I've been. I haven't been on panels. Right. I have been at panels.
Yeah,
they're a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun, but like you do get.
I don't know if I want to go back. Like it's weird where I'm way more influential. I have way more drive in this community, and where I'm going and the sector I'm going to be in the next year and a half or so. I think I can make more money outside of it. And honestly, building a panel takes me anywhere from 20 to 40 to 60 hours, depending on what it is, and getting it down perfect in the rehearsal. And for me to get a free ticket and have 50 people in there in a 200-person room, I don't know if it's worth it, in which that it's not as enjoyable as it used to be, and I feel like it's not appreciated the same way it was appreciated about 5 years ago. And I just noticed a change in what people want. And certain panels always do well that I've done, but other things don't. And then my last 2 panels were not good. And so I'm licking my wounds extensively, and I need time off from that. But I digress. So obviously I want to give both of you an opportunity to self-promote, because we've been speaking for a while and a lot of stuff's going on. So where can people back the Kickstarter? Where can people check you guys out on social media? Obviously, your podcasting and live streaming and a variety of other stuff. So where can people find you and actually support this project and make it happen?
Well, MAVRICS is on Kickstarter. You can search for it, MAVRICS.
Yeah, we had to spell it wrong for some reason.
We also have a link tree. So if you go to Linktree Global Frequency Studios, it has links to everything, the Kickstarter and our YouTube and all of that. We have a YouTube channel, Global Frequency Studios. We're also on Twitter at the Global FREQ. So it's the Global Freak, but spelled FREQ because it's short for frequency. And we're on Instagram and Facebook at the Global Frequency, all one word. And that's, we have a Twitch too, which is Global Frequency Studios, but I don't think we have many followers yet.
But we will be streaming retro Sega Genesis games every other Sunday, so maybe we'll build up that Twitch following. Who knows?
and so obviously I've been saying this, and I'm going to continue to say you have to support indie, and what that means is, if somebody has a Kickstarter, you have to back it. You have to put your money where your mouth is, and whether you're backing digital tier or a physical tier, or you're getting the whole shebang, every dollar matters, because we're not DC, we're not Marvel, we're not Image, indie content creators. And so every dollar gets that project closer to being funded. And even if it is funded, every dollar over helps to make the next one happen and helps to make this book better, because if you reach certain goals, obviously books get upgraded, perks get upgraded, prints get added, and other things happen, and you benefit as the backer. And even going beyond this, let's say mechas are not your thing or militaries are not your thing, sharing it out changes the way things are done, and it's so helpful. Social media algorithms are not what they used to be, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but if you share things out on your news feed, share things out, in Facebook groups, share things out on pages, you tweet about it, you put it in your Instagram story, you never know who's watching, and you never know who is going to back it. It's going to be like, oh, I didn't see this, but now that this looks awesome, this is perfect for me, and it can go a long way. And sometimes sharing it is more effective than backing it. It's happened on this show where somebody shared out this interview and the person got 5 backers that they wouldn't have normally gotten, even though they were Facebook friends with the 5 people who backed it, because it just never appeared on their feed. And so it goes a long way. And even going further off of that, a project also might not be your cup of tea, but then a creator might come out with something that is. And if you're following that creator, it goes a long way as well. And also just liking tweets, liking Instagram posts, liking Facebook posts goes a long way as well, because, well, it makes me feel good when somebody just likes my page, or somebody enjoys, says, oh man, that's a really cool picture on Instagram, or oh, I like your tweet. It makes me feel special, and it reminds me that people are actually out there. And that helps tremendously as well. And also, I'm an indie content creator. My sponsor covers a bunch of stuff. But they don't cover everything. I have Buy Me a Coffee, so I appreciate when people buy me a coffee. It's sort of like Patreon, and there's a bunch of stuff going on with that. But obviously, you should be backing Kickstarters and go back this book, because it's awesome, whether it's digital or physical. And if you're going to do that, then you should buy me a coffee too, because, well, I would like to buy a Frappuccino tomorrow, and I need the money. So I am right now cash poor. All kidding aside, though, all the money that I do raise for my sponsor and Buy Me a Coffee and other things that are going on and other perks that I offer on Buy Me a Coffee goes back into this project and makes this happen. And so that's something that's coming out. And in 2 weeks, guys, something's going to be dropped. And it's going to be a fun ride. And I'm just letting everybody know that I'm writing the copy right now. Anybody who knows me can get an idea what's coming. And it's going to be a wild ride. So on that note, I'm going to give you guys the final word.
Support indie comics. Let's have fun. Yeah.
And thank you so much for having us on.
Oh, yeah. That'd be good too, right? Thanks for having us on. Thanks for watching.
And then that's the perfect way to end. And I believe that's a wrap.